All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started since I know everyone on this panel is very busy. I want to respect everyone's time. Welcome if you're just joining us. My name is Michelle Marchetti and I am the Deputy Director of the Cornucopia Institute. If you haven't already had an opportunity to introduce yourself on the chat, please go ahead and do that now. Let us know where you're calling in from and what co-op you belong to. And you can fill out our poll. I think Gail will keep that poll open for maybe just 2 more minutes. So if you have a chance, go ahead and fill out that poll. So thanks again to everyone for joining us for what I hope will be a really fun conversation today about authentic organic food and farms, and of course, berries. As I said, my name is Michelle and I am the Deputy Director of Cornucopia, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel today. I think this may be the next best thing to actually being on these organic farms and eating fresh picked berries by the fistful. So we'll have to settle for that today. Just want to get a few items out of the way. If you haven't already, like I said, introduce yourself. Just a note that only panelists will be visible today. Everyone else is on mute. All other activity will happen in the chat. So please do use the chat and to connect, to ask questions, to engage, and use the chat rather than raising your hand. And just make sure that you select all participants in the drop-down menu so everyone can see your questions and we can all participate. We'll try to get as many questions today answered as possible right in the chat. And our communications manager will come on later in the call to share a few of the questions from the chat. We'll save about 10 minutes for that at the end. So Patrick, if you want to come on and introduce yourself so everyone can see your face when you come back on later.
Hi, everyone. Patrick here, Communications Manager for Cornucopia Institute, and also Cornucopia's representative from Washington. I'm from Seattle. I live in Capitol Hill, so it's really great to be here for an event, my home state. And yeah, I'll be monitoring questions in the chat. So pop them in there and we'll get to them later on.
Thanks, Patrick. And Gail, I think we can go ahead and close the poll. Go ahead and share those results when you have a chance. All right. So the last question here, we have 92% people, members of their local food co-op. That's really great to see. Awesome. And the last question on here is, do you use Cornucopia scorecards? So some of the people on this webinar are supporters of Cornucopia and already know about our scorecards, but many of you are probably wondering, what is a scorecard? What is Cornucopia's scorecards all about? So imagine you're in the grocery store, you're standing in the checkout aisle. Well, you haven't even gotten to the checkout aisle. You're standing in the aisle with 2 packages of organic eggs in your hands, and you're reading the labels, and you're taking in the splashy packaging and the shiny faces of the happy hens and this idyllic farm backdrop. And you're thinking, I wish I knew what was really going on with these farms. So Cornucopia's scorecards take the guesswork out of these decisions. Ranking brands in categories such as snack bars and yogurt and eggs and dairy, our scorecards are a hallmark of our work. They showcase ethical farms and brands while pointing out the factory farm producers to avoid or scrutinize. Our newest scorecard release is our organic beef scorecard, and with more than 175 brands, it's our biggest yet. The Cornucopia Institute always recommends your local certified organic farm as your best option. And that's why your local food co-op is an important player in this story. We are so grateful for Tony and the rest of the team at Skagit Valley for co-hosting this event for us and for helping to make our work possible. Tony, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. So yeah, it's a cool opportunity for us to be able to hook up, I think, with Cornucopia and talk about how, we as a food co-op, appreciate the work that they've done as an organization. Organic is a tricky area to maneuver through sometimes. There's lots of variables in organic, and so they give some information that I think can be useful to people, and that we also, as a co-op, have lots of information and lots of stories to tell about our own farmers. But a little bit about myself. I'm the GM at Skagit Valley Food Co-op. I've been here since January of 2020. Back into store operations. Prior to that, I had worked for National Co-op Grocers for 5 years, which is a cooperative of co-op grocery stores across the United States. And I did work with them and working with a lot of co-ops on the West Coast. And before that, I was in Hanover Consumer Co-op in New Hampshire. So about 25 years in the co-op business, 40 years in the retail business. That kind of shows me how old I really am. And a lot of that was with produce. I was a produce guy. I started out in produce as my career and ran produce departments and chain store produce departments, and then into the co-op world, where I worked with local farmers for a long time and built farmers programs. And so this is dear to me and something I'm kind of passionate about. And Skagit Valley Food Co-op is a great place to be if you're passionate about local foods and local farmers. A little bit about Skagit Food Co-op, a little bit of information for people is that in our produce department in 2020, 95% of our sales came from organic foods, organic produce. So that's a pretty healthy number. There was always a few items that we would carry that were local that did not meet that certification. But still, we've always knew where that product was coming from and how it was grown. And then in the whole store, the grocery, the center of the store, which is all kinds of packaged foods that people buy everywhere, 65% of our sales were derived from organic certified foods or foods that had organic ingredients in it. So that's a big number we're pretty proud of, something we try to grow all the time as we're selling our food. And a little bit of context to the local farmers that we deal with, that in 2020, about 28% of our sales, a little over, just under $1 million came from local farmers, organic farmers. So that's a number we're pretty happy with and proud to be part of something pretty unique and cool in this part of the world. So loving my time at Skagit, glad to get a chance to introduce and meet people here, even if it is through Zoom and hopefully in person in the future. So that's it. I guess I'm passing on to Melody to introduce herself.
Thanks, Tony. I'm the executive director of the Cornucopia Institute, and I live in actually rural Minnesota. We're all virtually officed at Cornucopia. I've worked here for 9 years. And I first learned about pesticides in our food when my kids were small, back in the early 2000s. I joined my first food co-op, and I started thinking about the ethics of food and farming. Like, what do I support with my money? I realized that these huge industrial operations that sell most of the food that we have available to us in this country were poisoning our land, water, and air. They were poisoning the wildlife, farm workers, even farmers themselves. They were poisoning us, me and my kids. So I learned that certified organic means no synthetic fertilizers, highly toxic pesticides, or pharmaceuticals are being used. And I also learned that it means much more than that. It's not just what's missing. It's what is actually put into the soil. So organic food costs more because organic farming takes much more effort than the corn-soy rotation that I see all around the Midwest. It takes a completely different mindset, a deeper understanding of an individual field or animal or even plant to produce high-quality organic food. And local, authentic organic is absolutely worth every cent. You're supporting a business that is caring for your air, your water, your land. It's crucial. I believe in organic completely. And it led me ultimately to the Cornucopia Institute, where we work to ensure the integrity of organic food and farming. And we help people navigate the incredibly confusing world of marketing claims. It's kind of what Tony's talking about, and tall tales in the food industry. I think I'll just pass it on to our policy director, Marie Bertram.
Bertram? I'm an attorney and I have a background in environmental law and animal sciences. And I'm speaking to you from the beautiful Willamette Valley in Oregon, just in the general Portland, Oregon area. And I'm here to talk about policy issues and also just support in the chat. I will be dropping my email in the chat as well. If anyone wants to follow up with questions, I'd be happy to help. I'm just going to pass on now to our farmer panelists for introductions. Why don't we begin with Anne?
Well, I farm in Northwest Washington State. I'm about 60 miles from the Skagit Food Co-op where Tony is sitting right now. And my husband and I discovered the Skagit Valley in the mid-70s, so I'm dating myself. And found a piece of land and started homesteading here. And I finished my degree at Washington State University, and WSU is located in the heart of Palouse country in Eastern Washington. Beautiful, beautiful country, but very susceptible to major erosion. And so I grew up going to college watching world-class erosion, 40 to 50 tons per acre per year, and started asking harder questions about how is this sustainable? How can we grow our food like that? And I studied animal science, trying to get into veterinary medicine. And the more I learned about the livestock industry, I became a vegetarian. And the more I learned about food, I realized that we had a whole lot of fixing to do. And after I graduated college, didn't get into vet med, found myself working at a dairy for a year, fell in love with it. And met the folks that were getting Cascadian Farm going and joined with them. And I worked at Cascadian Farm for 11 years as we grew to a 700-acre operation, shipping organic food all around the country. And started going to Tilth producers meetings, the organic farm group in Washington State, joined the board and never looked back. And I've spent the last 40 years, this is my 42nd year farming. And so I've been here in the upper Skagit Valley and traveled all around the country and been engaged with working for changing our food system ever since. And I'm delighted to join you all today. And if I have more time, I'll give the best pep talk I can for Skagit Food Co-op.
All right, we definitely want to hear that pep talk, Anne, so save that. Let's pass it to Ezra next.
Howdy, folks. I'm Ezra Rands, one of the co-owners here at Bow Hill Blueberries up in the North Skagit as well. We have 8 acres of heirloom blueberries. They're about as close as you can get to the wild blueberries that are grown just wild in the areas of New Jersey on the East Coast in the Pine Barrens. And so when a traveling salesman came through in the mid-40s and was selling blueberries, that is what the Anderson family chose to start farming. Over the years, those berries proved to be almost as good as native endemic species, and they really have taken a strong hold on these acreage here. So we have kept all these old heirloom bushes happy, and we want to provide them as comfortable and as permanent and as native adjacent a home as they can here. And we believe, being right along Edison Slough, that our land and water interface, that riparian area, is so key to the hosting of species, to the hosting of a regenerative system that is really the only way forward in our eyes as farming is concerned. There's just no parity to the quote unquote conventional system where it's relied upon to just dump conventional chemicals on your acreage and expect that that is what's going to provide the long-term nutrient value to our plants and then to ourselves. We rely upon nature to provide those nutrients to us, because nature has been providing those nutrients to itself since before humans were around. So we are just along for the ride, and we are stewards to this land for as long as we're here. We hope these blueberries will outlast us.
Thanks. That was beautiful. I think having these thoughtful land stewards, farmers on this call with us today is what makes our work at Cornucopia so meaningful. So I just want to say thank you again to the farmers. I know this is a busy season, and thank you so much for coming out today. We appreciate it. I'm going to pass it back to Melody to talk a little bit more about Cornucopia's work in the context of authentic organic farmers like Bow Hill and Blue Heron.
Thanks. I think most importantly, it takes all of us, farmers, co-ops, and eaters together to make real change in the food system, which I think if you're here, you probably agree that it's rather broken. The marketplace is chock full of greenwashing. So greenwashing is a marketing practice where they might make vague statements about how green their products are, or maybe more commonly show you pictures of animals on grass. And here I'm thinking of some brands currently in the marketplace where I know what their very factory farm feedlots look like, and they may show you cows munching grass. That's not illegal, but it is really misleading. So Cornucopia is here to help you find the best organic food. And also a lot of we also have articles that help you cut through marketing hype. So might explain different things that you see in the marketplace and clarify for you. Organic is more expensive. I think that's what we're here to talk about. But you do absolutely get what you pay for. I invest my money in local organic food because it has this enormous value beyond just filling my belly. And our upcoming Living Soil campaign is a reminder to all of us that food ultimately comes from the soil, all food. Soil is the foundation. If the soil is alive with fungi and bacteria and all the tiny critters that live in there, it can provide everything the plants and pastures need, and in turn, everything we need. There are more living organisms. I love this fact. I just love this fact. There are more living organisms in 1 teaspoon of healthy soil than there are people on this planet. So to achieve that level of healthy soil, organic farmers build soil organic matter. That's where the label name comes from. I'm so grateful that these berry farmers took time away from their fields to talk with us today, and I think it's time to turn it over to them to hear what investments they make to bring you their berries. Skagit Valley is known for its rich alluvial soil. It's what makes your farmland so great. Can each of you talk about why the soil matters and the investments you make to steward the land, water, and air? I think we'll start with Anne again.
Well, having been blessed to farm on some of the planet's most beautiful soil, and it's right next to the river, and the river's taking it, so I get to watch it go away sometimes. It is the foundation for everything. And if you don't have healthy soils, this may be a great place for growing berries, but there's a whole plethora of insects and diseases. I mean, we get 85 inches of rain a year here. So we have a lot of disease pressure and insect pressure. There's new bugs to the northwest. And it's really important to maintain diverse ecosystems. So we're attracting the beneficials and a wide variety of pollinators. I also grow raspberries, and sometime I'll be standing in my raspberries when they're in full flower, and I'll count 7 or 8 different species of bees. Certainly similar in the blueberries, but blueberries, because of the shape of the flower, they limit which bees can go in. But nonetheless, the diversity of pollinators is always important. Constantly building the soil is always important. Some blueberry growers maintain a rather scorched earth policy, and you don't see very much living things in large blueberry farms. So, you know, making sure that we've got pollinators in between the rows, and we grow both annual and perennial cover crops between the rows. We encourage deep-rooted clovers to help us recycle things. Because blueberries are perennials, we're not constantly turning the soil all the time. We do a deep mulch to keep disease pressure down. Our worst disease pressure for blueberries in Western Washington is mummyberry, a fungus, which is really difficult to manage. So we manage it with mulch, and just really understanding our challenges, their life cycles, and how to address it the most gently that we can really are the principles of organic agriculture.
I would love to swap notes with you, Anne, because we're doing a lot of the same stuff. Our blueberries are mulched annually with a deep mulch that, like Anne says, not only helps with the mummyberry, but it helps to cover the annual weeds, so that it reduces that weed pressure on our blueberries, because we hand weed down our blueberry rows. So we've got over 8,000 blueberries that we are on both sides of at least 3 times a year, pulling the weeds out or raking the weeds out to kind of disturb just that top inch or less and get the finger thread weeds out before they take real root. Besides that, we are adding a lot of biochar to our soil. The pine lands where these blueberries were endemic are controlled by almost a decade repetition of wildfires to control the undergrowth. And so the biochar and the activated carbon that is left behind is, we're finding, very useful to creating even richer soils than the alluvial soil that we do get, because being on a waterway, much like Anne, we get to see a lot of our topsoil potentially leave as the slough ebbs and flows through our property here. So beyond that, I think if we're thinking about it as a holistic practice, there is a sense of wanting to change not just our behavior for a small change, but we want to change the way that we're thinking as an ability to create large changes. So where inorganic or conventional farmers see weeds, we see the earth trying to recover itself from a tillage event, or we see the wrong type of species out competing. And so it's really our job as organic farmers to be our own ethnobotanists, to be our own entomologists, to see these imbalances and to try to introduce to our best ability the rebalancing agent to these systems.
Thanks. Ezra, just a quick follow-up here for those who maybe don't know, can you explain the beauty magic of biochar?
Well, biochar is essentially carbon capture. It's a pyrolysis as opposed to a burning of a substance. So as you burn anything with carbon into the atmosphere, a lot of that methane and a lot of the gases are released and inefficiently burnt. That's a lot of the smoke and the soot that you see and the ash that is left behind from most campfires. When pyrolysis is introduced, there is a limited oxygen environment, and that really, it retains the carbon structure of what you burnt, but it releases slowly and burns off a lot of the gases and the heavy metals. And so what you're left with can look visually almost identical to what you put in it, like a stick still looks like a stick, or even, you know, a animal carcass can resemble the animal carcass, but what is left is just carbon. It's essentially 98% carbon and 2 to 3% potash. And what that does is it creates more of a sponge-like soil amendment, that it isn't fertilizer in a sense, but it creates a house for the bacteria and the fungus to live in. And when we amend that in the right amounts, that can enrich in our soils, and it helps to essentially create a enhanced filtration in our own soils. It's carbon filtration.
Thanks for that great explanation. So from nurturing, caring for the soil to, I love, Anne, what you said about farming in the most gentle way possible. I love that. You know, this is what you buy this is what you're paying for when you buy local organic, all these things, and your money is going back into the local economy. So moving a little bit from what's happening in the fields to what happens as laws are made, I'm going to move it to Marie. Marie is our policy director and has a pulse on what's happening in the regulatory arena and how Cornucopia can strategically apply pressure to help move the needle in favor of authentic organic farmers. Marie, can you give us an update from your vantage point?
Yeah, so Cornucopia is a watchdog for the organic label. That kind of means that we have an eye on the regulatory progress and help prevent fraud in the marketplace. And we do that in a couple of ways. We follow what the regulatory process is doing in USDA, their enforcement, and then we also just keep an eye out on the marketplace in general. And what's been happening recently is something that's important to a lot of organic farmers is cost share. Cost share provides financial assistance to producers to offset their organic certification costs. Recently, in 2020, the amount of cost share was reduced from a modest reimbursement of up to 75% of producer costs to only 50% of costs. Certification is expensive, and cost share helps a lot of small and beginning organic farmers survive in this especially competitive marketplace. So this change has been pretty worrisome. We're hoping to fight to get that updated. It requires more funding, which is a constant battle in Congress. We'd love to hear how the farmers on this panel are affected by this change and other changes. I'm sure they can speak to their practical experiences rather than their policy experiences with these program reductions. Another interesting policy conundrum that has been going on is that hydroponics can be certified organic right now. There has been some case law and some regulatory work that's been going on the past few years in this issue. Cornucopia in general does not think that hydroponics should be organic and shouldn't fall under the label as is. Organic production emphasizes supporting soil health, and hydroponics, by definition, avoid the soil entirely. There's some nuance to this discussion because some soils production does make sense, like sprouts and microgreens, but produce that thrives and benefits from healthy soil should be in the soil. So one of the questions we get a lot in this realm is, how can you tell if something is hydroponic? Organic food won't necessarily have a label showing it's hydroponic, but you can make some deductions based on what you're looking at. For berries, for example, be wary of out of season stock if it's fresh, and check to see where the berries are coming from. So you'll see like a country of origin sometimes on the package. If you're looking at berries that coming from Europe or even Mexico, they're almost certainly hydroponically grown. Ironically, these countries, their own organic centers do not allow hydroponics under the organic label, so they send that all to the USA. So those are some highlights, and of course I'm in the chat answering questions, and I'm happy to answer questions offline as well if anything comes up now or later. Back to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Marie. So co-ops and Skagit Valley Co-op make it easier for consumers to support their local berry growers. So I'd love to turn it over to Tony now to talk about the importance that the important role that co-ops play in the food system.
Great, thanks. So first, it was great hearing everybody speak, and in particular the local farmers. I'm always blown away with the knowledge of our local farmers and and the challenges they deal with. It's always in my history, it was always one of my favorite meetings of the year. I was meeting with the growers and getting around a table and hearing them discuss things. It was always just rewarding. Interesting where I came from, I had a combination of organic farmers and, they hated the word conventional, so I'm not sure what else to use right now, but conventional farmers. But hearing them at a table together and discussing things, a little bit of back and forth was always very rewarding to hear, and realizing that there's so many levels of how you grow food in this world, and organic is something that we embrace and that a lot of people embrace. But there's also local farmers that try to do other things really right. So there's so many variables in how you can grow food and how it comes to you as a consumer. And I think, and what are your best choices? And I think one of the really important roles co-ops play in this is that we are able to give a intimate connection to consumers. Short of you going to a farm and interacting and learning from, talking to the farmers and understanding how their practices, co-ops play that role. To bring that to you, and it takes a lot of work. I think sometimes people don't understand that, it's much different than just ordering from one supplier and everything shows up at your house. We have farmers are on the phone every day with our produce people multiple times, and 10 to 12 to 15 deliveries in a day, and that's like a lot of time to organize. And then one farmer might be, oh, I don't have this today, and then they got to get on the phone to get it from somebody else. Or I have this today, and they say, well, let me see if I can buy that today. So it's all these conversations, but it's where you learn what's going on at the farm. And then our staff and people that run our produce departments are able to turn this over to the consumers and talk to them about that and share. I mean, I witness it on a regular basis here, hearing our staff talking to customers and just having such a great knowledge what's coming in season. Oh, that'll be in a couple of days, that's going to be coming in, and where it's coming from, and be able to tell stories about it and how to use it also. So that's really good. But I think it's a hard thing to navigate here through. Cornucopia is a watchdog organization that ultimately has a very strict criteria, and they talk about what their recommendations are. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to land on the full extent of what their recommendations are, because that's not the reality in the retail world. Instead, we're trying to make best decisions that our consumers want, based upon affordability, based upon availability, based upon local regionality, all those things. And they all come into play. So there's so many things to think about all the time when we're looking at what is the best product for us to carry. But I think that we know that doing it right, selling organic food has a higher cost. There's no question that it can have a higher cost to the actual food being sold. It doesn't mean that it has a higher cost to society, and because there's so many undetermined costs of the damage that's done when we raise food in the inappropriate way. And those are hard to quantify sometimes, and hard to market and show, because there's not a lot of data out there for us. But we know that there's a lot of practices out there that aren't good for our soils and good for our regions. So we here try to, at the co-op, we'll try to always do the things right. But we hear that from people like, oh, food's expensive, or your organic prices are too high. And it's true. It costs more to grow food organically. It costs more to process it. It costs more to sell it, and dealing with local food. But that doesn't always turn out to be that it's a higher retail. I just want people to understand that it doesn't translate into, oh, the food's too expensive at the stores. We do competition checks on a regular basis against our regional competitors. And it's amazing how often we see that our organic prices are the same or very similar to conventional foods that are out there. Consumers, just like Cornucopia uses a scorecard, consumers should use a scorecard in their own little region, as far as really truly understanding that, price sensitive items sometimes may be really lowly priced at a competitor to try to get you in the door. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everything else is fairly priced or lowly priced. And so I think people just need to do their work, check prices, figure it out. I'm confident that we sell great food and we sell it at fair prices, and that the experience is that much more enriched in all the local farms around here that we're able to support by doing this, by being the conduit of farms to consumers. And I think it's work we should be proud of, and it's work that that the consumers should be proud that the co-ops do for them in their regions, because it really is important to play that role and to help kind of navigate down a tricky path sometimes to get the best food to people at the most fair price. So thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Just a reminder that all the questions will be directed to the chat. So I see a question in the Q&A. So just if you have a question to share, just use the drop-down menu to select panelists and attendees and add your question there. And we will answer some of them at the end. And Marie, I know, is answering some questions, and I'm sure the panelists will answer as well. So we all have a unique perspective here on this call, which is great, you know, from the retail level to the farm to our position as organic stakeholders advocating for change. So I'd like to open it up to all panelists who want to chime in here to address some of the common misconceptions you hear around organic.
I'll start. I'm happy to jump in. One of the things that I would like to tackle is already been brought up by Tony, and it's kind of that apples to oranges correlation of conventional to organic, where organic farms, they have such a higher, or at least the certified organic farms have a higher bar for record keeping, for making sure that they are on top of not just the farming aspect, but the record keeping in order to demonstrate to certifiers that we're doing things in a certain way. And that takes man hours and that takes time. And there's, I think, that central fallacy to the idea of why is organic more expensive, as opposed to what Tony was getting to. And the real question might be, what is creating that false price for a conventional berry or a conventional produce? And there are, I think, more hidden costs than we are willing to admit. But another misconception that we run into daily on the farm is, and I'm sure Anne can speak to this as well, is people asking for fresh blueberries. And even if you know that a blueberry is a summer crop, it's unlikely that you're going to know when the specific varietals that this farm has is likely to be ripe. And that isn't a personal failing, it's a societal failing of just a societal lack of understanding of our food cycles. We go to the supermarket and we have blueberries and bananas and strawberries whatever day we want. And that creates a false sense of entitlement, perhaps, to our foods. We want our edible arrangement, and we want it to be available on our birthday, even if we've got a February birthday. So I think that misconception is driven by this false price for conventional fruit, and the burying of the real cost of all those carbon miles, the footprint of those berries, the cooling costs, the transportation costs, and really, where does the $1 or the $3 that you've spent on that pint of berries, where does that $3 end up? Is that $3 going to stay in the Skagit County, or is that $3 going to be somewhere else? And that is, I think, the voting with your wallet aspect of food security.
And I guess, I would add that in general, we've gotten to a place where people really don't understand what it takes to grow food in general. So while there may be misperceptions in organic, there's misperceptions across the entire food chain. And, there's ways to learn about it, but a lot of it is hidden. It is difficult to find out. It is, the grocery stores are so competitive. Tony could tell you long about, what are the margins in the grocery business? It's not much better than the margins in the farming world. And concentration and consolidation, is just what drives so much of what we do. And the Skagit Food Co-op has been actively working with local growers for over 15 years. And Tony's right. It costs them a lot more money to deal with 25 of me than it would to just get everything from one semi-truck, Charlie's Produce, which is also getting great local organic produce. But, the produce manager calls Charlie's when the rest of us have done our 25, 35 phone calls a week. So it definitely costs more to buy local, whether it's organic or not. And more and more growers understand and see the benefits of reducing their pesticide use. So conventional growers are learning from organic farmers all the time. Certainly there's so many hidden costs of all of our resource use. That's really where we need to focus a lot more research and bring true cost accounting to bear all across all of our resource use. It's been one of my pet issues since I was in college. But maybe since I'm speaking, I'll just jump over real quick to cost share. I was active in drafting both the state and federal organic rules. And certainly, one of the questions that got asked in these endless meetings is, growers that are using pesticides don't have to pay any fees for the use upstream and downstream costs of using pesticides, and organic growers aren't using these long-acting pesticides, and we're having to spend all this extra money to pay for certification. So cost share has helped all of us, small, medium, and large. It's a really important part of the federal organic rule and USDA programs. And fortunately, organic is not a partisan issue. And there are Republican and Democratic organic farmers all over the world. And so that policy helps all of us. And it is something relatively easy to argue, although in budgetary crisis times, nothing is easy to argue. But cost share is a really important program. And hopefully we get lots of eaters and growers sending in comments to USDA as we go through the next Farm Bill cycle to really push for both cost sharing and more organic research funds and all the rest that we need to continue to build a food system that is gentler to everybody.
I'm going to just jump in.
Go ahead, Tony. You go.
Okay, I was just going to jump in and say that I think that, in the years that I've been dealing with local farmers and at different locations, and always I think that the thing we always have to be wary of, and that we as a grocery store and a co-op can try to inform people of and educate people of, and we have people like our farmers on the call today, that have know the challenges and understand is that we need to get that out to our consumers so that we can try to vote and push our legislation to go in the right direction when things are potentially damaging to our farmers. And I think that, it's so easy to make a general statement out there that, you know, people, oh, we're just trying to put safety regulations in place and we need the certification. It's going to be better for your food as a consumer. And we pull back that veil and that curtain. I think you realize that our local farmers are already doing all these amazing things and doing great things and getting safe food to us. And instead, so many of these regulations and certifications that people are trying, that the big ag is trying to push out there, will make it almost impossible for our local small farmers to be in compliance. And therefore they, you know, it's hard enough growing food. And now you've got to worry about all this, you know, legislation coming your way and what it's going to mean, and sift and navigate through it. So I know they all work together great with this, but that's always been, I just wanted to kind of share. I think that's a big risk for me. It always has been, is this kind of things that are really not truly in the best interest of our consumers, but are marketed as such, that we got to be wary of that.
Yeah, that's true. I think a myth that is prevalent that I find surprising is that oftentimes consumers believe that the non-GMO label is actually equal to or superior to the organic label, not realizing that organic is in fact by definition non-GMO. And I think it goes to this wider confusion about what is GMO and what does non-GMO mean. Non-GMO does not mean that there were no pesticides, synthetic fertilizers. It actually pretty much ensures that those things are in place without the organic label attached to it. I get that one a lot.
And I had a follow-up question for you. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, I know that you're transitioning and mentoring the next generation of farmers on your farm. If you can talk a little bit about what that process has been like for you, and just sort of the importance of preserving what you've created.
Well, yes, the body's getting tired. I've been working hard since I was in college, and I'm about to be 67 in a couple of days. So the body definitely was looking for a little more distance to the lovely, blessed earth that we walk on. And I've been growing berries my whole farming career. I also had the most amazing crew. I had people working for me for over 10 years, and they were just some of the best people I've ever known in my life. And as I was looking at a few critical things happening in my life, it probably took me 3 years to make the decision that I needed to start scaling down. And then I mulled over that decision all summer long. And finally, and I don't own much of the land that I farm. I have long-term leases on all of it. And just in consult with the woman that owns the land, it was like, okay, Ann, you really, you know, too many surgeries, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the season, I told my crew I wasn't going to do this again. I was doing about 10 acres of vegetables and a couple of acres of berries, and that I was going to make some changes, but that I wanted to offer anybody that wanted to do something the opportunity to do it. And 3 former employees took me up on the offer to help them start their own commercial farm operations. And 3 other former employees took me up on, let's all have a big garden together, because we all really enjoyed working together. And the landowner really wanted the land to stay in organic cropping. So it's just been as wonderful a journey as all the years of just farming, because now I get to see 3 former employees building successful businesses and taking advantage of all the infrastructure that we put in place for all these decades. They use my pack shed, they use some of my equipment. I do all the starts in my heated greenhouse for one of them. So we have these long-term partnerships. We get to keep working together. I'm helping mentor them. They call me with whenever, you know, I'm being their pest and disease go-to person. So this, you know, research, I've been working with WSU and other ag researchers since I was in college. So this way I get to stay active with you know, what are the biggest challenges, and I can put my expertise and my connections to helping them with that. And they're all doing it differently, their own ways. So I get to let go of my way of doing things and watch a new way of farming. And I'm working with a couple, with 3 BIPOC individuals. So they're my go-to team for learning how to navigate and address racial equity issues, which I'm deeply involved with. So all in all, it's really being a great transition. I'll quickly add that, you know, a lot of us are retiring, and I was listening to an interview about a retiring farmer in California, and when asked what he was going to miss the most, his answer was the aesthetics and the people. And so now it's like the farm is still gorgeous. It's full of all these growing foods. There's volunteers there. I get to work with people I thoroughly enjoy with. It certainly made the pandemic much easier to bear. We're all outside. We all enjoy each other's company. And it's wonderful seeing that along. I will add that I've been involved with mentoring and leadership development for many, many years. I was mentored myself by lots of other farmers, especially multi-generational farmers. Other farmers in the Skagit Valley have been incredibly generous and helpful to me. And my farm would not have survived without my conventional neighbors helping me out of really tough situations. And there's an article in Skagitonian Reserve Farmland that featured one of those stories. And again, I would not be farming without enormous help over the years. We can't do this alone, especially first-generation farmers, and I am a first-generation farmer. And so working with our local growers is absolutely critical for our survival. We need all of us. We need all the farmers that go to buy parts and go to buy fertilizer and go to buy lime. We need all of us. And so supporting local regional agriculture, no matter what the source, is really, really critical. It's the only way a regional agriculture will survive. Your dollar is your vote. And by looking at who grew that food, you're ensuring that your communities are being taken care of.
Well, here's to community collaboration and mentoring and the honoring and transferring of wisdom and owners who truly appreciate the importance of well cared for land. So we have about 5 minutes left, and maybe we can go 5 minutes over. If you need to leave earlier, please. I know farmers, you're very busy, and Tony, you're busy as well. So if you need to head off earlier, but if you can stay on for an extra 5 minutes, Patrick's going to come on and pick some questions from the chat.
Yeah, one question we have here, right from the chat, and this is directed at all panelists. We had a question asking if there were any developments on the horizons or strategies that could or should be implemented that may lower retail prices of organic products.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and the farmers may, I'm sure, probably have a whole different perspective. But from my perspective, I mean, the prices of organic foods have come down significantly over the last 20 years. I mean, it happens as farmers become, you know, more practiced and more collaboration, and they understand things more. So it's already happening. But as far as getting us down to, you know, that's a fine line to lower price food versus cheap food. Driving towards cheap food is how we got ourselves as a country and as a, you know, into a tough place in farming, and not where we want to be. So you got to be really careful about that. That's all. But I do think it will become, we have seen organic pricing, you know, come down over the years just by, I think, a lot of efficiencies built into it and expansion of land. So that's my point of view on it.
I'll say that Cornucopia, we agree wholeheartedly with what Tony just said, and I would say that it's a real question of bringing prices down versus cheap food. That's really it. Cheap food takes all of the costs that we, as Tony said earlier, cannot easily quantify, like the poison of the water, for example, and, you know, puts it out there for us to pay in a different way. And so I think that prices will continue to come down somewhat, but I also think that it's important to think of your food in terms of what value you get. And I have anecdotally found that you can eat less food when it has a high nutrient density, which I find from my local organic produce all the time. That's my statement. Marie, do you have any thoughts? I'm curious.
Yeah, so there has been some rumblings due to the current administration being interested in the climate change issues, that there could be ways to support organic farmers through not cost share apparently, but through other programs that give farmers some benefits for doing soil health practices, environmental practices, conservation practices. So that's kind of in the air right now, and the rumblings on the regulatory sphere. Whether that will lower the costs, I'm not sure, but it will certainly make organic farming more resilient in the face of economic issues, and also will be giving organic farmers more acknowledgement of the value they're bringing to environment, the globe, local communities. So that's something that could potentially help in the future that's being talked about now.
And I guess I'll just say, as an employer, you know, we're pushing 14, 15 bucks an hour minimum wage in Washington State now, with leave and paid leave and sick leave added onto that. And for growers with over 50 employees, they're also having to pay health insurance. And that's, I think, still the highest minimum wage in the United States. I haven't paid myself that very much in 40 years, just saying.
In the state of Washington, we have a special program that allows producers to certify in the first 3 years before they can be certified as organic. They can have a transitional organic label. And this is, I think, a great way to support local growers that you see are making that change or are making that investment, but do not yet have all the pieces in place for proper organic certification. This means that they're farming in an organic fashion without the use of synthetic pesticides or anything that the organic certification would disallow, but they don't have that 36-month window pre-organic harvest to certify that land as organically maintained. So it's, I think, a great way for consumers to find products and, again, vote with their dollar to promote the products that they see heading in the direction that they want to support.
Ezra, are you aware of other states that offer that transitional certification?
As of yet, I'm unaware. We are doing 3 acres of our neighbors' blueberries in a transitional phase right now. So we hope to bring those into the Bow Hill umbrella as certified organic, but it will take time. And we are currently managing and selling those berries as transitional.
Patrick, I think we have maybe time for one final question.
Great. Yeah, we've got one more from the chat. It was answered by Marie in the chat, but figured we could open it up to all panelists to see what they thought. And the question was, if the subsidies paid to big ag were transferred to organic instead, what would that do to the comparative cost? Comparative costs there being cost of conventional versus organic, non-certified versus certified.
Well, that's a really intriguing question, right? Just to clarify, there are no subsidies paid for fruit and vegetable crops. It's just for commodity crops. But nonetheless, you know, I mean, they've been trying to lower commodity crop subsidies for a long, long time. That's a political football. But yeah, you know, I mean, if we really looked at these true costs of what all this Midwestern grain is grown for all the feedlots, yeah, you could put a lot of money to supporting all sustainable ag practices, and that would absolutely help. You know, it would be great to have some economists really scratch some lead on that.
I think the big, I just want to say the big piece, and it's a conundrum that I'm not sure we're ever going to win in my lifetime or get the American consumer to see, but it's still this whole, you know, so many of the subsidies are driving, you know, about getting low food costs to people, and it's what's getting us in this position. And so, you know, our food costs are so low in the U.S. Compared to other places, you know, and I think we somehow or other we got to make that shift. We've got to and continue to do that. I have no answers for it other than I want to keep going back there, and that I get cautious of any subsidies, even though it may be helpful. But we've still got to let's raise food, and regionally, I think regionally is our best chance for success to really educate people regionally what food costs and getting people willing to spend you know, more money of their budget on buying the right food. And that's easy for people like me to say that are in a different you know, financial position than a lot of people in the world. But still, there's people with all different levels of income that choose to eat in a different way. And so I just don't want to give up on, we got to fight that. I really think that's the answer a lot versus subsidies. But that we can support our farmers in other ways to help them be successful. But subsidies to me, I don't know, it's a slippery slope, I think.
All right, any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Well, I just wanted to thank Anne. Looked like maybe you were leaning forward to say something.
Yeah, I guess I want to just argue in favor of growers being certified and filling out ag statistics surveys. It's really important for us to be counted. Don't just look at those, for the farmers in the room, don't just look at those surveys and toss them in the round file, fill them out and send them back. Because if we're not counted, if they don't know we exist, it's really hard to fight for programs that support us. So I'm one of those, stand up and be counted.
That's a great call to action to end on, Anne. Thank you for adding that to the conversation. I want to thank everyone on the call. I want to thank Tony and Nicole and everyone else at Skagit Valley for helping co-host this webinar. I want to thank the farmers who stepped away from their busy harvest season, and for all the people on our call who financially support our work. We can't do this work without you. Thank you. Please check cornucopia.org for more information, and you can follow up on our social media. If you have any additional questions for the panelists, for Cornucopia, Gail just added a slide here with all the contact information. And please reach out to all of us with your questions. And finally, keep an eye out for follow-up communication from Cornucopia with a recording of this event and how you can get more involved in our work. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope there's some blueberry pie in your future. Thank you.